You ever get around the gaming table and you feel like every single roll is a disaster?
Just beefed it.
Well, today on the Wizards of Eem podcast, we're going to talk about how failure is glorious. Welcome to the Wizards of Eem podcast. I'm James, and this is Ben.
How you doing, James? Success is overrated.
Totally overrated.
Everyone always wants to succeed on their rolls. They want to roll high. But what if you wanted to roll low and just totally whiff everything, just have everything go south? Pure chaos. Yeah, we're firm believers that chaos is king when you're playing RPGs, specifically Land of Eem. You know, that's our wheelhouse. And
that's our wheelhouse.
More often than not, embracing failure will lead to more fun and creative gameplay that always succeeding won't offer you. Because when you're always succeeding, there's really not much conflict. And in Land of Eem, we have the dice system set up so this happens more often where you're failing. Little failures here and there, and big failures.
Yeah, and success is totally overrated when you're playing a game because the whole point of playing a game is to face challenges and to be introduced with constant challenges. And the way that Ben, myself, Peter, or George play on our actual play is usually chasing the worst scenario that can take place and using the fail forward dice system to make it happen.
Right. And that's the key, failing forward. There's nothing worse than when you fail a roll and the gameplay grinds to a halt. And that often happens in a binary dice system where it's pass fail. I can't count the number of times just like early on in our like gaming history of like, okay, I'm going to try to do this. Nope. Doesn't work. And then you're just like back at
let me try to pick that lock. Okay. Roll it. Failure. Okay.
All right. So you can't get inside and you're just going to stand there and we just walk away and pursue something else.
Yeah.
However, we set it up in Land of Eem where even if you're failing, let's say you fail with a plus, okay, that means there's some silver lining that's going to push the story forward. Now, in the example of picking a lock, let's say your character, you fail with a plus, you fail to pick the lock, but the noise attracts, you know, a friendly PC who offers perhaps a different way in. Maybe that way in is going to be a little harder, or there's some other obstacle in front of you that you wouldn't have faced if you just picked the lock and went straight in.
Right, right.
But let's back it up because
whoa, way back. Let's back it up big time.
Let's talk about our dice system and why it is the way it is, because we always get asked the question, why did you use a D12? And beyond the fact that, you know, we love the D12, it actually rolls the best out of any die.
Yeah.
It can roll for days.
The short answer is that there's an emotional reason for the D12 and then there's a mechanical reason for the D12.
The emotional reason rolls really well. It's just shaped really perfectly.
It's a beautiful
and it's underused.
A criminally underutilized die.
Like, when's the last time you used a D12? Only if you were a barbarian and you wanted to use a great sword or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I haven't been since I was like 9.
Yeah. So it's like once in your 25 years of playing RPGs. So we said, all right, we'll start there. And then, you know,
long live the D12.
The other reason is, you know, Dungeon World, you know, powered by the apocalypse, that vein. However, the 2d6 provides this bell curve that it's not very swingy. You're not failing a lot outright. It's mostly succeeding with a complication or something like that, which in our estimation is not as fun. Like it's really fun to get those swingy variations like a D20 will give you.
Yep.
And so we've got it set up in a chart where on a 6 through 8, you've got a success with a twist. You're succeeding, but there's some complication, some little thing didn't go exactly as you planned. And that's our way of, you know, including failure even on a success. And then failure with a plus, you fail, but there's a silver lining. There's some way forward for you. It's because we're all about moving the story forward.
Yeah, and I'm gonna rewind to like failure with a twist and give like a really basic example of what that might look like. Or I'm sorry, success with a twist. Success with a twist with a really basic example. You're breaking into a warehouse and there's a locked door. You pick the lock, but there's a twist and you wake up the guard dog, and it adds this element to the conflict that you now have to deal with, even though you successfully got into the place you're trying to break into. And that's the crux of it. That's the whole point.
Exactly. We touched on failure with a plus. You picked the luck, but there's some other alternate way in, maybe a little harder, maybe a little more complicated. And then a complete failure. That's, rolling a 1 or a 2. You completely botched it. Not only did you fail, there's this other complication. Like you didn't get in.
Key and the alarm went.
Exactly. You're being chased by guards now or something. So that's always going to lead to another direction. It's not going to leave you stagnant. And there's nothing worse in a game than just being like, okay, what do we do now?
Right. Right. And I was thinking about random encounters earlier today, just like the different types of random encounters. And I thought to myself, like, gosh, like a failure with a plus or a success with a twist is like on the fly, collaboratively coming up with like a random event or a random encounter during the primary objective of what you're doing. And that's a really, you could find yourself, the whole quest could be eaten up by that twist. The whole quest could be that barking dog set off the guards and we got to run away, and we never really even get back there. You're running through the city. A single die roll that's a failure of some kind, or even a success with a twist, has changed the entire trajectory of the adventure, which is the kinds of stories we hear people talking about in Discord all the time. It's like they became obsessed with this one thing, then this thing happened. They didn't succeed, but this is how they solved it. And a single tiny nugget of an adventure ends up, snowballing into all kinds of activity.
Yeah. And that's great because it's fun as a GM as well to see how everything's going to unfold. Can get a little boring when you have your players on a track and you need to follow everything to a T. So when things can change on a dime like this, it's fun to, that's the whole point of playing, is to watch what happens, to see how it unfolds.
Yep. And we've had just as much, I don't want to call it jubilation, but like, you cheer for a D12, you roll a natural
extreme
12.
Joy.
Yeah, extreme joy. But then you roll a 1 and everyone's still laughing.
Yeah. It's like especially during an important moment.
Yeah.
Rolling a 1, I mean, it is on par with rolling a 12. It's just,
it is.
It's like,
it's a different feeling, but like everyone's like, oh, and I love that. And, our entire actual play is like that because we were I feel like recently always rolling.
And
really
that always leads to something like more interesting that changes the game. Like the first thing that comes to my mind is when you guys were facing off with a shadow dragon in the Lair of Shadows.
That's the exact example that I was going to give.
And not only did, Zeros, Peter's character, like not convince the shadow dragon of what he was trying to do, but he just reminded him of his former glory and he flew away just to like bring terror to the world. And so you created a super villain.
Yeah, campaign villain because of a failed roll. But it totally didn't have to go that way. But that's the really the elements and the moments of games that I find absolutely the most fun. And the ones like we've told that story like 5 times, explaining how Land of Eem works, and it's such a good example of how just a single roll could totally
shape the game for the rest of the campaign.
Yeah. And we still have all those other campaign objectives, but the last several quests, we've been trying to, figure out what our next moves are with this Shadow Dragon.
And not only does it like alter the face of a campaign, like on the whole, but it can spark character growth and change in role playing.
Definitely. Which is something that I particularly find fun when we're playing with our characters. Like I was joking around last time about like, oh, Buddy's redemption arc that he'll have after this decision that's like questionable. And in my head, I'm like trying to tell the story of Buddy Boubet while also playing the game because I'm just naturally in a state of storytelling. And, the mechanics of failure and just can really boost those opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like he's constantly like on this roller coaster of highs and lows.
Yeah, like life. He's living his life in the Land of Eem. Highs and lows.
And the lows just always provide this like level of humor that is central to the campaign.
Right. It's like the great Mel Brooks said about comedy. Tragedy is when I cut my finger, but comedy is when you fall into an open sewer and die. And it's true. And
that's how we play Land of Eem.
No, but we promote failure in TTRPGs because failure is where all the laughs are at. Yeah, sure. but it's also where character growth can come into play. And it's sort of the engine for all of the creativity, right? Because I want to do this. Sure, it could be a creative solution and you succeed and then you win. But I want to do this and it fails. Suddenly the whole group is scrambling to figure out what next to do to succeed. And
if you look at any story in the world, there's always that like second act where they fail or there's the big obstacle
Always.
and, the protagonist can't get over the hurdle. They got to, go back to the drawing board. They got to go through the next part of the story and take their lumps and learn and figure out what to do so they can finally overcome the problem.
Right.
That's going to make a good story.
Exactly. And the reason that is because it's a satisfying thing to go through. And it reminds us, the reader, the watcher, the listener, that failure is just a next step to grow and learn so that you can succeed. And it feels all the better when you do after you go through those trials and tribulations. So tabletop RPGs can definitely have those elements and be just as rewarding. So step into a sewer.
Yeah. And you guys kind of literally stepped into a sewer, a more natural sewer, by falling down Doom Nozzle while you're chasing a Gorgle Beast.
Yeah, totally.
I can go through the entire campaign, failing against Krog, falling down into the abyss, failing and unleashing a shadow dragon. I mean, the list goes on. And it's all shaping the narrative in interesting ways.
And you're kind of overwhelming me with the magnitude of those failures right now. All of our characters are like super down and out, but we will redeem ourselves because the redemption arc is what's next.
And it makes my job easy though, because I'm not having to really think of all of these plot points happening. I'm using the sandbox and reacting to your failure, your constant unmitigated failure.
That's true. But you know what? I want to make a comment about how people do ask us like, oh, they feel kind of on the spot with a twist or a plus sometimes. You roll it, you don't know exactly what to do. Well, the way that Ben and I mitigate that, like, freezing up and struggling with an idea is we just go around the table. It truly becomes collaborative where everyone is trying to piling on ideas for what that twist or plus can be. And then the GM can arbitrate, and it makes it fast and easy. And because of our style of play, I often just pursue twists that are far worse than Ben would ever concede.
Yeah, I often find myself saying, "Wow, that's a lot than I was going to go for."
You didn't need to go. I was going to have him just drop a sword or something. But now you've got 16 quest arcs set up for yourself. No, but that's the fun of it. That's the telling the story. You're telling the story together.
It brings everyone involved and it makes everyone more invested when their ideas are in the mix. So it's not just like this one-sided relationship of the GM laying down all the truths. Like everyone is participating. Everyone is putting their heads together. I never worry about, what's going to happen because I know I can rely on you guys if I'm stuck to just throw me something to work with.
Yep. And in the case of George, he'll just GM himself. He'll just go through the whole quest, coming up with all of his successes and failures that will always serve him. But it's almost like being a player is almost like a little bit of GMing and training because you're working together to make the story arc emerge.
Now, one tip we could also give is to encourage your players to just enjoy their failures. And I think a way to do that is to maybe not always make it so dark and dreary, the failure, like lean into the comedy sometimes. We don't have to say it's like a slapstick comedy all the time, but
Sewer Fall. It's funny.
But yeah,
plenty of times when we've been playing where the twist has been hilarious.
That will get a player who isn't used to that type of play into it. They'll start to see the bright side of it.
Right.
And they will realize that, hey, it's not all bad. Like, it's not the end of the world. Actually, this is fun. And it's taking the story in different places. And
yeah, I mean, failing is fun. What can we say? So fun. Oh, goodness gracious. Everybody roll a D12 and hope they get a 1. That's what I'm saying.
And now you could say to your parents, yeah, I'm a failure, but everyone is enjoying it.
You know what I mean? But all my friends are having a blast. Oh, so anyway, that's kind of our take on how to embrace failure and how it can be a really great tool for having really fun, engaging games.
Indeed.
So thanks for joining us for this Wizards of Eem podcast. If you're interested in checking out Land of Eem, do visit landofelem.com and download the quick start guide for free. We've also got a campaign going right now on Kickstarter. You can visit Kickstarter and search for landofelem.com. We'll have the link in the description. And you can support the Land of Eem Dungeoneer Adventures Beginners game, which is a stripped down version of the rules for 8-year-olds so that educators and parents can run games easier for kids. But that's not the only part of the campaign. We're also releasing an expansion to the Land of Eem core game with the Underlands sandbox setting.
The Underlands, which we're playing in our actual play. So if you want to get a taste of that, just watch that. It's a lot of fun. It's 4 realms.
4 new realms.
Descend deeper into the world.
You descend deeper underneath the mucklands, and it's got its own tones and flavors and new characters and new folk. We're super stoked to be able to share it with everybody. So if you're inclined, please support us and share it with a friend.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll see you in the video.